Hi everybody, this is David at You Made It. Today I'm talking to you about clay play. These are some basics on how to succeed with any project you set your mind to with clay. We'll be doing some future clay projects to show you specific projects like how to do an awesome taco fish with cool teeth, or cereal bowls and unicorns and angels, all kinds of fun stuff. But the following video will give you some basic information to succeed. Let's start with your clay. Your clay comes wrapped up so that it doesn't dry out. If you pause a project, always wrap it up, be it saran wrap or back in the bag, whatever works, just keep it from drying out. Start by setting up your table. You'll need a jar of water and a toothbrush and a paper placemat. It can be a piece of paper. This is cardstock just because it's thicker, it doesn't get messy fast, or a paper plate, whatever works. Paper is the best one though because it doesn't stick to paper. When you open up your clay, everybody's first instinct is to stick their thumb in the clay. Try and avoid this, and if you're working with a small child, help them avoid this too, because everybody wants to do it because it's squishy and awesome. So first we want to talk about the thickness of the clay and how to not fold air bubbles in. Clay, the thickness should be about the thickness of an Oreo cookie, as you can see on the side walls here. And as you can see on the bowl here, that's about the thickness of an Oreo cookie. And I like that one because it's pretty universal because most people have had an Oreo cookie. If it's a Thin Mint, it will be too weak. And if it's a double stuffed Oreo, it will take forever to dry and sometimes be a problem with firing. So try and stay within that range, but don't worry about it too much. Just don't go too thin. When you start your project, the easiest way is to start by hammering it down into a giant tortilla. I like to hammer it down gently and encourage children, if you're working with children, to take their time, because the number one problem we have during this stage is people hammered so hard that they make really, really thin spots. And once it's too thin, there is no going back. You have to then turn it into something like a plaque to hang on the wall. Because once it's too thin, you can't fold the clay back together. When you're working with clay, let's say I'm working with this piece and I get it so thin and I'm like, oh no, it's too thin. I can't fold it back together because in so doing, I have also folded air into the clay. And the problem with that is that the air will explode in the kiln. It will literally blow up your piece of pottery. So if you make a mistake, take that little bit of clear clay that was a problem and discard it. You can put it in your compost at home. You can put it in your yard. It will melt in the rain and it's totally non-toxic, so there's nothing wrong with that. But don't use it on your project because it will explode. One thing I do like to do with clay that I've made a mistake, like if I get it too thin, I can always use that clay to add accent pieces. Like when I was making this taco fish, those little teeth, I could have easily made that out of clay that was too thin because they're not, it's not in a place that would break easily. You have to kind of get your finger in there to worry about it. Whereas the clay up here really needed to be about the thickness of an Oreo to hold together well. So when I'm doing my project, if I haven't folded air into it, I wind up with something awesome like that. Now this can be whatever I want it to be. And again, we'll go over some other projects in future videos, but this is a great starting point. I can make a unicorn bowl out of this. I could make that by putting it down into or on top of a bowl. So let's say I really like the shape of this bowl. I just take a piece of saran wrap, lay it on top, mold it around until I have the shape I want, and now I have a bowl. The saran wrap is important to keep it from sticking to the bowl. It's very challenging to get off otherwise. And if you do use a mold, always take it off before you let it dry overnight. What I like to do is once I've made my shape, I'll let it dry overnight and then I'll paint it. But before we go to that stage, I want to talk to you about how to glue clay to clay, because everybody tries to just stick the two pieces of clay together. And the problem with that is as the clay dries out, they fall back apart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little unicorn horn. Mine won't be quite as good as this one because we're just working to show you how this works, but you'll get the idea from it. Say I've got my bowl and I take my toothbrush and I dab off the water because you don't want to make a slurry. You just want to scrub the clay with a wet toothbrush. And then you scrub where it's going to go. and then you stick it together as hard as you can without disfiguring your unicorn horn. Then I like to do a teacher check. And since you're working at home, you can be your own teacher. Pick up your project, shake it. If the horn falls off, you didn't glue it on well enough, and that's okay. You just glue it back on again and try again, and you'll do better the second time. Once you've got your project like that though, everything's perfect. You can carve into it if you want to carve some eyes. You can carve a smile. You can take little pieces of clay and you can add, like say I wanted this smile to be 3D. I just scrub and scrub, and now I've got a smile that I can then paint tomorrow. You can paint the same day with these clay paints. They're pretty great that way, but it's also a lot easier if you wait till the next day to paint it, and plus that makes 2 days worth of fun out of the clay project. So then I would just leave that on a piece of paper to dry overnight and then paint it the next day. Be very careful with your project the next day, especially if you're working with young children. Things like this will break right off the next day because the clay becomes fragile until it's fired. So store it properly away from little hands. Make sure that when you transport it back to the studio that you're very gentle with it, because things will break off, especially in that stage before they're fired. And then once you bring it back, we'll fire it, we'll clear glaze it, fire it again, and you will have a washable, food-safe masterpiece that you made from a ball of clay. I hope you have a great time. Please leave any questions or comments in the comment section below. We would love to get back with you and help you with any project you come up with. But have a great time. Thank you all so much.